In January, the temperature under the 4th Street overpass dropped to 9 degrees, and I made a mistake that should have killed me. I had a good sleeping bag that night, a real one, rated for cold, the kind I had been proud to finally get my hands on. I thought a good sleeping bag was the whole answer. I laid it straight down on the bare concrete, climbed inside, zipped it to my chin, and went to sleep feeling like I had finally figured something out. Concrete does not sleep. Concrete pulls. All night long, it drank the heat right out of my body through the thin bottom of that bag, and I never felt it happening because freezing to death does not feel the way you think it will. It does not feel like agony. It feels like getting warm. There is a stage where the shivering stops and a heavy golden calm settles over you, and you feel like the most comfortable you have ever been in your life. Then it feels like nothing at all. That calm is your body giving up, and the cruelest part is that it feels like a gift. A man we called Doc found me a little after 4 in the morning. He was a veteran too, older than me, missing 2 fingers on his left hand that he never once explained. He saw I was barely breathing, and he did not panic, and he did not waste time looking for a phone. He just dragged me bodily off the concrete onto a flattened cardboard box, packed crumpled newspaper down both sides of me until I was wedged in tight and got a small flame going inside a clay pot beside my chest. By sunrise, I could talk again. By noon, I understood that everything I thought I knew about the cold was wrong. I did not learn how to survive winter from the VA. I did not learn it from a pamphlet or an intake counselor. I learned it from men like Doc, and most of those men learned it somewhere far harder than an American city. This is what they taught me, passed hand to hand the way it was passed to them. And I need you to understand all of it before we get to the part that makes me angry. Because that part will not make sense until you see how simple staying alive actually is. Let me show you the clay pot first, because that is the one that pulled me back. You take a candle, an ordinary candle, and you set it on a metal tin or a shallow can. Over the top of it, you place an upside-down terracotta flower pot, the cheap orange clay kind they stack by the 100 outside any garden store. The flame heats the clay from the inside. The clay stops being a pot and becomes a slow, patient radiator, giving off a steady warmth long after you would expect one small candle to do anything at all. Doc crouched next to me while I was still shaking and showed me the better version, the nested one. He never told me where he learned it, and by then I had already learned not to ask Doc where things came from. You take a smaller clay pot and set it inside the larger one, propped so there is a gap of air trapped between the 2 walls. Now the flame heats the inner pot. The inner pot heats that trapped air. The trapped air heats the outer pot, and the outer surface gives off heat longer and more evenly than a single pot ever could. You plug the drainage hole in the top with a scrap of foil or a stone, so the heat does not just chimney straight out and abandon you. It will not heat a room. Anyone who tells you a candle heats a room is lying to you or selling you something. What it heats is a body inside a small enclosed space, a car, a tent, a shelter no bigger than a coffin. And here is the warning Doc gave me that morning, the one every old vet repeated every single time, the one I will give you now. Any flame in a sealed space burns oxygen and can produce carbon monoxide, a gas you cannot see or smell that kills you in your sleep. You always leave a gap for air. A cracked window, an open flap, a vent. The cold is honest about wanting to kill you, Carbon monoxide is not. Never trust a closed space with an open flame. The clay is the whole secret, and the name for that secret is thermal mass. A bare flame gives heat only while it burns, and that heat scatters the instant it leaves the wick. But surround the flame with dense material, and the material soaks the heat in, holds it, and releases it slowly. You are not really burning a candle for warmth. You are using a candle to charge a battery made of clay. Doc said that to me word for word, tapping the side of the warm pot with the hand that still had all its fingers, and I have never once forgotten it. Once you understand that, the next thing Doc taught me makes sense. This one he did not learn in any city. He learned it overseas. He told me that in the war, when a fire anyone could see would get you killed, you stopped making heat, and you learned to move it instead. You would gather stones, river stones, anything dense, and warm them carefully at the edge of a small controlled flame. Never in the flame, never fast, because a stone heated too hard, especially a wet one, can crack and throw fragments. You warm them slow and even. Then you wrap those warm stones in cloth and bring them into your bedding. A wool blanket wrapped around 2 warmed bricks will carry a man through hours of cold, because the brick is the battery, and the wool is what keeps the battery from draining too fast. He told me about burying coals, and this one I have used more nights than I can count. You let a small fire burn down to glowing coals. You scrape a shallow trench in the dirt, you rake those coals into it, and you cover them over with several inches of soil. Then you lay your bedding on the ground directly above. The earth carries the warmth up into you slowly, all night long, and the fire is completely invisible from a few feet away. Men learned that trick in places where being seen meant dying. I learned it in a country that was supposed to be my home, where being seen means something different, but means losing everything all the same. Hold on to that. It is going to matter more than the coals do. So heat is not something you have to constantly generate. It is something you can capture, store, and carry with you, and a man who knows that can lie down in 9 degrees with a candle and a clay pot and live. That one idea is worth more than any piece of gear in any store, and it costs nothing but knowing it. But thermal mass only matters if you stop the heat from escaping in the first place, and that is where most people on the street suffer without ever knowing why. The night the concrete almost killed me, the sleeping bag was not the failure. The failure was everything between me and the ground. Cold does not mostly come at you through the air. It comes up through whatever you lie on. Because the earth and the concrete are enormous, patient cold sinks, and your body is a small warm thing. They will quietly empty all night. So the first rule the old vets drilled into me was that you insulate down before you insulate up. Cardboard is the cheapest miracle in this country. 3 or 4 layers of flattened boxes underneath you will outperform a far more expensive blanket laid on top. Crumpled newspaper works for the same reason, because crumpling it traps countless little pockets of air. Trapped, motionless air is the actual thing that keeps a body warm. Doc called it dead air. Dry leaves stuffed into a garbage bag, dry pine needles, packing foam, balled up plastic, all of it does one job, which is to build a wall of still air between your heat and the cold ground. That is also why layering your clothing beats one heavy coat. 3 lighter layers trap 2 separate cushions of dead air between them. One thick coat traps almost none. The military taught a version of this as a 4-letter word, COLD. And the letter I never forgot is the C, which stands for clean, because dirty matted clothing loses its loft, and loft is just another word for those air pockets doing the work. A filthy coat is a thin coat, no matter how thick it looks. And here is the last rule, the one that kills more people outside than raw temperature ever does. Wet. Damp clothing pulls heat from your body many times faster than dry clothing does. A man can survive a brutal dry night and die in a milder wet one. The vets had a hard saying about it, and the meaning was simple. If you are working hard enough to sweat, strip a layer off before the sweat soaks in, because that damp layer will turn traitor the second you stop moving and go still. Stay dry first. Stay warm second. Always in that order. The cold rewards patience and punishes the man in a hurry. Now, if you do need a real fire, real cooking heat, there is a right way to build one, and Doc had no patience for the wrong way. A big open campfire is mostly a lie it tells you. It roasts the side of you that faces it, freezes the side that does not, throws most of its heat straight up into a sky that needs no warming, and devours fuel like it has a train to catch. What Doc taught me to build instead was a rocket stove, and he taught it to me for a reason I did not understand until later. You can make one from a single steel can, from a few stacked bricks, or carved into the side of a dirt bank. The design is an L-shaped tunnel. You feed small sticks into the short horizontal mouth at the bottom, and the fire burns at the elbow where the tunnel turns and rises. That vertical section behaves like a chimney and creates a hard draft, a fierce upward pull of air, and that draft makes the fire burn extremely hot and extremely complete. A rocket stove burns so clean it gives off almost no smoke, because smoke is just fuel that failed to burn, and a hot enough fire consumes nearly all of it. It runs on a handful of twigs, where an open fire would eat a whole armload of logs. It concentrates the heat into one usable point instead of scattering it. And the missing smoke matters more than comfort ever could, because smoke is what gives your position away. That was Doc's reason. We burned small and clean and hidden on purpose. I am about to tell you what we were hiding from. Everything I have just told you costs almost nothing. A candle, a clay pot from a garden store, cardboard from behind any supermarket, bricks lying loose on the ground, twigs. None of that is the hard part. The hard part, the part nobody warns you about until you are living it, is that staying warm requires somewhere to be. And somewhere to be is exactly what the rules are built to take away from you. In city after city in this country, it is against the law to sleep outside. They call them anti-camping ordinances. On paper, they are about tents and public order and keeping sidewalks clear. In practice, they turn the simple act of not freezing into a punishable offense. You can be cited, fined, even arrested for the crime of lying down with a blanket in a country that some of us swore an oath to defend with our lives. I have stood and watched a cleanup crew with a police escort beside them move through an encampment in the middle of February and throw everything we own into the back of a truck. Tents, bed rolls, the clay pots, the stacked bricks, the cardboard insulation, every layer of it, gone in 20 minutes. They called it a health and safety operation. They told us the fire codes did not permit open flame, did not permit the clay pot, did not permit the very methods keeping us alive. And in the very same breath, they had not one shelter bed to send us to. So when Doc taught me a fire that burns small and clean and invisible, this was the reason, not the war. This, a truck in February, and the knowledge that being seen meant losing everything and starting over with nothing in the coldest part of the year. That is the real trap, not the cold. The cold is honest. The cold I can fight with a candle and a clay pot and the things Doc carved into my memory. The trap is a system that confiscates the gear, clears the spot, writes the ticket, and then acts astonished when a man is found frozen anyway. The knowledge itself is free, and no one can outlaw knowledge, but they can make every place to use it disappear, and in the end, that comes to exactly the same thing. I do not blame the country, and I want to be careful and clear about that. I do not blame the people who drive past us with their windows up. Most of them genuinely have no idea. In a single year before my own life came apart, I was one of them, and I had no idea either. What I blame is the machine that decided a human being staying warm in a doorway is a code violation, an eyesore, a problem to be relocated instead of a person to be reached, and I blame the gap. There is supposed to be a system that catches men like me long before the underpass. I came home and I asked for help, and I was handed a phone number. The phone number led to a wait list. The wait list led to a form. The form led to another office in another part of town. And somewhere inside that maze, the months quietly ran out, and the weather did not pause to wait for my paperwork to clear. Some of the men I knew outside had been far better soldiers than I ever was. They did everything right, filled out everything, showed up to everything, and the help still arrived too late, or it arrived as a pamphlet, or it never arrived at all. Abandonment, I have learned, is almost never one dramatic act you could point to. It is 1,000 small reasonable delays, each one defensible on its own, that add up to a man on the concrete at 4 a.m. I want to tell you what happened to Daki because he is the only reason I am still here to say any of this. Doc made it through that winter, and the one after it. He never did get his housing sorted the official way. He never reached the end of the maze. What finally got him inside was not a program, and it was not a form. It was a woman from a small church group who learned his name, sat down on the curb beside him like it was the most natural thing in the world, and kept coming back week after week until she found him a room. Not a referral to a room. A room. He lived almost 3 more years in it, and he spent a good part of that time teaching the clay pot and the rocket stove and the dead air rule to younger men who had just landed on the street and did not know yet that the concrete pulls. He used to tell me the cold was never really the enemy. He said the enemy was forgetting and being forgotten. The code you can plan for. The code has rules, and rules can be learned. Being forgotten has no rules and no method, and there is no candle for it. So here's what I am asking you to do. And it is one thing, because one thing actually done is worth more than 10 things sincerely intended. The next time the temperature drops and you pass someone living outside, do not look away. And do not simply feel bad and drive on. Learn their name. I know that sounds small. It is not small. A name is the first thing the machine strips from a person, and the first thing that person needs handed back. Keep a box of hand warmers in your car through the winter months. Find the one group in your town that genuinely shows up. The church basement, the veterans outreach, the volunteers handing out wool socks at midnight, and give them an hour of your time or $20 of your money, because those people are the room that Doc finally got. And they are almost always running on nothing but their own stubbornness. The men who taught me to survive the cold are mostly gone now. Doc is gone. The knowledge they handed down, the candle and the clay, the dead air, the buried coals, the hidden hot fire, was paid for in winters most people could not imagine and would not survive. I am still here carrying it. And now tonight, you are carrying a little of it too. Do not let it be the knowledge that disappears in the end. Let it be the forgetting. If this story stayed with you, the most useful thing you can do right now is share it with one person who has the power to help in your own town, and find your local veterans outreach group this week. That is the entire ask. Stay warm out there and watch out for the ones who can.